So the first major tournament of 2025 is starting soon this evening as this video goes out on Thursday the 30th of January in the Win My World Masters. Anyone new to darts, the World Championship, while it is the 2025 World Championship, is technically part of the 2024 season. Confusing, but that's how it works. You'll get used to it. So this is the first major tournament of the year. But first of all, there were a couple of World Series events, the Bahrain Darts Masters and the Dutch Darts Masters that happened over the last couple of weeks. I haven't been too well over the past couple of weeks, so I wasn't able to watch these in full, but I've seen the highlights and I'll just give a quick little rundown on these. So Stephen Bunting won the title in Bahrain, beat Gerwyn Price in the final. Bunting's really started to put it together over the last few years. He won the World Masters. Well, it was just called the Masters last year. They've rebranded it this year to the World Masters, but he won the tournament last year, his first major title in the PDC. He was a BDO World Champion, but again, first major title since switching over to the PDC. He's had a good year, some really good performances, big wins. He hasn't obviously won another major title, but he's kept it ticking over, climbing up the rankings in the Premier League now. He played really well at the World Championships, was unlucky against Luke Littler. Unlucky in the sense that Bunting played really well. Littler was just better and just was unstoppable. Really good start to the year for Stephen Bunting. He got to the final in the Dutch Darts Masters as well. He was beaten by Rob Cross. Cross was eliminated in the first round of the Bahrain Darts Masters by Paulo Nebrida, who's had a good month or so himself. He had a decent little run in the World Championship. Anyone who's watched my other videos knows I'm a Welshman, and Nebrida beat Jim Williams, one of the Welsh players in the World Championship, so I was a bit disappointed, of course, but Paulo Nebrida played really well. I think he made it to round 3 and claims the scalp of Rob Cross in Bahrain. Gerwyn Price got to the final, of course, in Bahrain against Bunting. He almost hit a 9 against Luke Littler. I was really pleased to see Price getting past Littler because he can struggle with players like Littler who are just power scorers and just seem relentless up there. When things start not going his way, he can kind of not give up, but be a bit defeatist and think, well, this game's over. I don't have any chance of coming back into this. And he either overplays, trying too hard to get back into it, or plays too fast. It was good to see Price get out, hit the front, stay in front, hold off Littler. And I mean, his average was ridiculous. 115 let me have a look. 115.31 Price's average. Absolutely ridiculous. Elsewhere, so Dutch Darts Masters, Rob Cross beats Bunting in the final. Bunting again, really good performance from him. Good to see him getting to back-to-back finals. Cross righting the wrongs of the Bahrain tournament by coming back to win this one. Again, Luke Littler was beaten in the semi-finals by Stephen Bunting. So Bunting getting his revenge there from the World Championship. Gerwyn Price got to the semis again. Good for me. I know I'm biased. But yeah, so that was a quick summary of those two World Series events. Again, if I'd been able to watch them in full, I would have been able to give a bit more there, but those are my quick thoughts having just seen the highlights. A lot's happened over the last month, so anyway, on to the World Masters, first major tournament of the year. They've rebranded this from just the Masters. They've revived the World Masters name, which was used before. 32 players playing in Milton Keynes. Starts, as I say, this evening, Thursday the 30th of January. So just a quick overview. Tonight's matches on Thursday: Josh Rock versus Jermaine Watamina, Damon Heta versus Ross Smith, Rob Cross versus William O'Connor, Gerwyn Price, Florian Hempel, Peter Wright versus Kevin Doetz, Luke Humphreys, Joe Cullen, Stephen Bunting versus William Borland, and Danny Noppert, Michael Smith. Then on Friday, the other 8 first-round matches: James Wade versus Mike DeDecker, Dave Chisnell, Cameron Menzies, Johnny Clayton, Martin Schindler, Nathan Aspinall versus Andrew Gilding, Chris Dobie, Ryan Searle, Luke Littler, Andy Bartons, Michael Van Herwen, Bradley Brooks, and Gary Anderson versus Dimitri Vandenberg. So that's the first round. I'll just go through these quickly and give my thoughts, analysis, whatever you want to call it. Josh Rock, Jermaine Watamino, I think this could go either way. Both are decent players. Rock, obviously, really exciting when he burst onto the scene. World Youth Champion. He hit that 9 darter against Michael Van Gerwen. I think it was that Grand Slam, I want to say. Ridiculous. Loads of hype. Hasn't really followed it up. He's won a floor title or two, but, he's still a player who can, when he's on, can cause anyone problems. I do think there's a lot more to come from Josh Rock. It's just whether or not he can get there and do it consistently. I think that's going to be the challenge for him going forward. Jermaine Watermain is a good player as well. I think Rock will take this one, but it can go either way. Damon Heta, Ross Smith, also a bit of a toss-up. Both players really good on their day. That's going to be something I'm going to keep saying, because a lot of the players you'll see often on the tour are, as I say, really good on their day and can beat anyone. That's what's really good about this tour at the moment. The standard of darts player is really rising, and that's really good to see. So obviously Damon Hett is the seeded player. He's the 8th seed here, but Ross Smith is dangerous. It'll be nice to see if Heta can put a run together. He's obviously won the World Cup with Australia. Him and Simon Whitlock was 2023. No, 2022. 2023 was Price and Clayton. 2024 was Smith and Humphreys. Yeah. But yeah, so I do think Heta takes this one. Rob Cross, William O'Connor. I think this is one of the easier ones to call. I think Rob Cross is going to take this one. O'Connor is a good player, but I think, especially after having won the Dutch Darts Masters coming into this, I think Cross is starting to get a bit of that confidence back. He's looked really good over the last couple of years after, he won the World Championship at first attempt in 2018. Maybe the pressure, and didn't really live up to that expectation. He beat Phil Taylor in Taylor's last World Championship. Well, Taylor retired after that, but I think he's really starting to find where he fits into this tour, find his level, his consistency, and I think Cross will have too much. Same goes for Gerwyn Price against Florian Hempel, as long as Price doesn't have one of his wobbles, which he is prone to do, and it's so frustrating when you know how well Price can play. He can, even when he's not playing well, he can still win matches, but he needs to hit that top level, find it, and keep it going. Peter Wright, Kevin Dirt's played quite well in the Dutch Darts Masters as one of the qualifiers, made it to the quarterfinals. He lost to Price, but as long as Peter Wright can get comfortable with the set of darts, and anyone who isn't as familiar with darts as familiar with Peter Wright, he changes his set of darts sometimes multiple times during a match. If he doesn't like how one set is scoring or finishing, he will switch to a different type of dart. It's bizarre, but it's worked for him. He's a 2-time world champion, PDC world champion, and as long as he gets comfortable with that set of darts, as long as his scoring's on, his finishing's on, he didn't have a great 2024, but he was all right in the World Championship, battled through that chest infection that he had. I think we haven't quite seen the last of Peter Wright, but he needs to try and recapture that the last bit of that form that he's had over the last 5 years or so. I think he'll have too much for Kevin Dirts if he can find that form, but Dirts could easily pull an upset here. Luke Humphreys, Joe Cullen. This will be really good. I do think Humphreys wins, but Joe Cullen's a really good player. He was a missed start at double away from winning the Premier League, Joe Cullen, a few years ago, and hasn't really hit those heights again since. But I do think this is probably going to be the best match of the first round, so that'll be interesting to see. Stephen Bunting, Willie Borland. I think Bunting's just on a great run of form here. I think he's going to come through this quite easily. Danny Noppert, Michael Smith. Smith's struggled recently, but to the point where he's the unseeded player here. Danny Noppert is the seeded player, but it could easily go either way. Noppert's really good, but I do think Smith has a higher ceiling than Noppert, so if he can find that form and recapture what led him to that world title, then I think he's going to have too much for Danny Noppert, and we're going to see a seed out in that one. Day 2 on the Friday, James Wade, Mike De Decker. Again, De Decker's a major winner now. Wade has struggled. Wade is seeded, De Decker isn't, but I'm going to say that I think De Decker takes this one. Like, if only because I just feel James Wade doesn't quite have that consistency. I may very well be wrong here, but I think it's going to take Wade a little bit of time into the season to start pulling out these wins. I think De Decker might catch him here. That's going to be my call for this one, but I could very easily be wrong. I think Dave Chisnell's got too much for Cameron Menzies. I think he's going to win that. Johnny Clayton, Martin Schindler, they've had some really good matches recently over the last couple of years, and Schindler tends to have the better of Clayton, so this is going to be an interesting one to watch. I'm, of course, going to be a super biased Welshman and say that Johnny Clayton's going to win that, but that's going to go either way. Aspinall Gilding's going to be interesting. I think Aspinall's going to win, but, Gilding has it in him. He won the UK Open, 2023, beat Van Gerwen in the final. He can put something together, but I think Aspinall's got this one. I think Chris Dobey beats Ryan Searle. I think Luke Littler is going to beat Andy Bartons quite easily. I think Van Gerwen, same against Bradley Brooks. Gary Anderson, Dimitri Van den Berg then is going to be really interesting as well. I think this is right there behind Humphreys Cullen as one of the ones to watch here. Humphreys Cullen, Noppert, Smith, and this Anderson Van den Berg, I think, is going to be really interesting to see these 3 matches. I do think Dimitri's going to win. Gary Anderson is the seeded player. He's seeded 14th, but I do think Dimitri Van den Berg, again, he's one of those players that can get... He's a bit like Gerwyn Price in a very different kind of way, in which he can get a bit too... not emotional necessarily, but he lets the situation affect him, similarly to how Price does. If he feels like the crowd's on his side, Dimitri Van den Berg, this is, if he feels like the crowd's on his side and he feels like he's in his rhythm and he's enjoying his darts, then he's really, really tough to beat. If he feels like things are starting to go against him, he can not necessarily sulk, but kind of withdraw into himself. But I do think he'll have it here. I'm just looking at the draw bracket now. So I'm just going to do a bit of a prediction for the rest of the tournament. I think I've got the bracket right. Everything I say in these next couple of minutes could be completely wrong if I've got this bracket wrong, but I think I've got it right. So the top half of the draw, I've got Josh Humphreys. I've got Luke Humphreys and Josh Rock. I'm going to say Humphreys wins that and gets into the quarterfinals. I've got Damon Heta versus Gedwin Price. I'm going to be a biased Welshman and say that Gedwin Price wins that. I mean, Damon Heta has been a thorn in the side of the Welsh players over the last few years. Obviously, Australia beat Wales in the World Cup final 2022. But I am going to be a bit biased and say that Gedwin Price wins that, gets into the quarterfinals. I'm going to say Rob Cross beats Michael Smith in their last 16 match, and I'm going to say Stephen Bunting beats Peter Wright. So that's the top half of the draw. Bottom half of the draw, Luke Littler versus Mike De Decker. I'm going to say Littler wins there. Johnny Clayton versus Chris Dobey. I can't be that biased. I'm going to say Dobey. I'm going to say Chris Dobey. I do think he's going to have enough there. It is one that could go either way. Clayton, when he's on with his finishing and taking out his ton plus finishes, he loves taking out 121, 141. He can really hit anything he can finish on the bull as well. He's not afraid to use the bull, and when he's got it and that's the weapon in his arsenal, he will go for those big finishes, knowing, well, if I miss the second big treble, I can hit the bull. But I am going to give that to Chris Dobey. I've got Michael Van Gerwen against Dimitri Van den Berg. I'm going to say Van Gerwen wins that. And Chisnell Aspinall. I'm going to say Aspinall. But it is a toss-up. And again, I am not an expert by any means. And this early into the season, it could be anyone. And someone I've got losing in the first round could win the whole tournament. It's such an inexact science predicting darts, especially this early in the season. What are my quarterfinals? I've got Humphreys, Gedwin Price. I can't be that biased. Luke Humphreys into the semi-finals. I think he'll have too much for Price. I think, what Humphries has shown over the last 2 years, it is going to be him and Littler fighting it out for the next couple of years at least. I'd like to see how Humphries deals now with, because he dealt with being world number one world champion last year very well. Took home some more titles, big titles. It didn't ever seem like, got to the Premier League final. It didn't ever seem like the pressure was getting to him. It felt like he was very much like, no, this is where I'm meant to be. I'm meant to be the world number one. I'm meant to be the world champion. I live for this. And, he dealt with that pressure really well. But is it going to be interesting to see how he deals with having someone else up there on that level with him consistently in Luke Littler, and someone who's being sainted as the next savior of darts like Phil Taylor was. Anyway, my next semi-final, I've got Rob Cross, Stephen Bunting. I think Bunting has too much for Cross. I just think Stephen Bunting's on really good form right now. I mean, Rob Cross is playing really well as well. They've both won those World Series titles, but I do just think that Stephen Bunting just has this. So that'll be my first semi-final, Luke Humphries versus Stephen Bunting. Bottom half, I'm going to have Luke Littler beating Chris Dobey, and I'm going to have Michael van Gerwen beating Nathan Aspinall. So we're going to have another Luke Littler, Michael van Gerwen repeat of the World Championship final. On the bottom half semi-finals, I'll start with that one, seeing as I'm already talking about it. I really, really, really don't know what to say here. I'd love to say, well, maybe Van Gerwen, has it out after losing that World Championship final and really not looking like himself, and he's going to win it. But I just think Littler's going to... I'm going to be boring. It's going to be Luke Littler versus Luke Humphries in the final. I'm sorry. It's going to be Luke Littler versus Luke Humphries in the final. I don't know who wins. I'm going to say Humphries. Could easily be Littler. Could easily be neither of them. What do any of us know? I'm going to stop here. This is long enough as it is. What do I know? I mean, it could be Gerwyn Price. It could be Michael van Gerwen. It could be Michael Smith. It could be Danny Noppert. It could be anyone. That's it. Well, almost 20 minutes into this, and that's it. My conclusion, who knows?